All righty. So yes, using Google Forms to gather information is our theme today. And really it's to look at kind of the concept of a survey or how you can ask questions, what kinds of questions you can ask and how you share the survey and how you deal with the data that you gather from that. Okay, so first of all, just again, we did say, I think I started to say and didn't complete my sentence. We are moving to the fourth Wednesday. We were meeting on the third Wednesday, so I hope that doesn't cause a lot of confusion. But our next few dates are October 26th, November 23rd. We're skipping the one in December because it's really close to the holidays, so we'll do January 26th. And I'm going to give you a link to these slides, and then you'll have these links. But they're on the LAC website on our calendar, and we'll send them out to the whole Google group or the Google Club. So these are the topics we have for right now. Google for asynchronous instruction and Google for synchronous instruction, and then Google Keep for productivity. And I'm guessing February or like sometime we'll be doing some Google, maybe some Jamboard if Liz later wants to jump in on that, but we'll have other topics. And actually you're going to have a chance today to tell us the things you'd like to find out about. So that will be a survey that you'll experience. Yes. In fact, here it is. So what I'm going to ask you to do, I'm going to put this link in the chat, but also if you're adventurous, you could try scanning this QR code and taking the survey on your phone. It's good to experience what it looks like on a small screen. They work really well on a small screen, which is why they're so powerful, even if you're back in person or whether you're doing remotely. I'm going to actually stop making this full size so I can grab that link and put it in our chat. So this is our survey. And we do usually do this once a year so that you guys can let us know if there's areas that you've maybe come across or heard about or tried working with. I got a few emails today from people who couldn't make it and were like, I have very specific questions about Google Forms. So we're always open for coming back to a topic we've covered before or working on very specific problems that you may be having on something very specific. One thing we know, like for example, well, I'll show it to you later, but there's an issue with Google Forms. Google Forms now allows people to upload content into the form, so you could ask people to add their photo or whatever. But if you create the form in Workspace, and this is oops, my phone is hearing me say Google all the time and wants to talk to me. Google Workspace is the new, what was it called before? Google G Suite. G Suite was the old term, and now it's Google Workspace. And you could have a Google Workspace at your work. So you may all belong to sort of a giant Google Drive, and you have your own drive in there, but it's all managed under your organization. And that comes up sometimes when people are trying to share something. Maybe the security settings on your agency's account are very tight. But one thing we've discovered is that upload piece for forms does not work if you create the form in your Workspace account. And if all of that is totally bizarre to you, or you don't know anything I'm talking about, don't worry about it. But if you know that you're working in a Google Workspace for your work, be aware that you might lose some capabilities. That's the only one we know of, but that one has been frustrating for some of our application process where we ask people to upload a resume or something. If that form was created in a Workspace account, it may be limited. So again, ahead of myself, we will come back to that piece. All right, so you're all working on the survey. Notice as you take the survey, what kinds of questions are we asking? What kinds of responses are you able to give us? Was it annoying? Like we require you to answer things and maybe you don't have any information there. How do we handle that? Those are all things for you to observe while you're taking that survey. And what's very cool for me is I can actually click on this link and I can see the survey happening in real time. Of course not really. Let's see. Why is it showing me that version? All right, well, I'll come back to that in a moment. log, sorry. So there we go. Oh, I see. Did I give you the link to the wrong one? Is this the one you guys are all seeing? I think it is.
Yeah.
All right, so I put the information, that's very funny. So that's our older one. No, I fixed it. It says fourth Wednesday. I don't know.
Should we be
All right.
doing this now, Nell,
Yes,
or is this for
do it
later?
now.
Oh,
Nope,
so
do it now.
sorry. I thought it was
no,
for
it's all
later.
good. No, I wasn't very clear. Yes, do it now. Partially
Okay.
because this is a great way for you to dive right into what it is to be the person taking the survey, right? So when we talk about how to make the survey, you'll have experienced being the survey taker. And as I said, as you go through it, notice the kinds of questions we're asking, the kinds of answers the ways you can give your answers. I'm actually going to stop sharing for a second, see if I can find my responses. Yay, I'm seeing some responses in there. So now I'm in the right place. Let's go into these other ones. So I see we have a couple of responses. I'm going to wait for a few more. So do go ahead and fill it out. You can always fill it out again later if you want to take a little bit more time to think about it. And right now you can just kind of put your, type anything you want in there, as it were. But I would like to have a few more responses because it helps me then later on when I'm going to show you how we're going to handle the data. And I'm going to paste it in there again in case anybody new came in. So this is the survey that we're asking everyone to fill out right now. And we're doing this for two reasons. One is that we really want to know your answers, but the other one is for you to experience taking a survey so that when we get into creating the survey, you'll have that experience under your belt, which I'm sure you've already filled out lots of surveys. See, Kitty is there. That's
He's bumping my elbow
very
because it's
meta.
I can't friggin' type.
Yes, pesky.
Okay.
That's Laszlo. He knows how to tell time.
So Faina, so you just joined us and I'm going to put it in the, we're doing the survey. I just put in the chat.
Because I didn't get a link, so I was trying to contact organizer.
Which is probably me, and I'm here, so I'm not checking that. So how did you, because we heard from a few other people that it was a bit of a struggle. How did you figure it out in the end?
So first time I mailed to you, but I figured out that you're busy. Then it says contact the organizer, and then it was saying it's in progress. So that's how I got it.
Oh, so then there was a link like from the Eventbrite page that you could click on? Oh, okay, Kristen's.
Yeah,
also
I'm gonna
taking
do
it.
survey, yes.
Okay. Yeah, okay, we're figuring out this process because this is our first time using Eventbrite. We've been in the past just having you register through Zoom, but we'll all be figuring this out. Yeah, Judy said she had trouble too. Okay, it's very helpful for me. I mean, maybe at the end we can get more details, but Kitty, you gave us some really good details, so I'm guessing that's what most people struggled with. So we'll remind folks that because we are going to be using Eventbrite going forward, so this will have to be the system.
My struggle was I couldn't remember my event. My struggle was I couldn't remember my Eventbrite password, so I had to reset it.
Right. And over the summer, I've transitioned to a new laptop that doesn't have any memory of any of my stuff, and I've been dealing with this kind of stuff on and on. So I totally hear you. We're all gonna learn our Eventbrite password. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen and take us back so you can see what I'm seeing. So I have 9 responses. So as the responses come in, I'm gonna see it up here. We're doing sort of a backwards thing today. Like you've just dived into the pool to experience the survey, and then we're showing you the back end of it. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how you create a survey. So we will get there. And I know for some of you, this is totally a new idea. So this is what we call the back end. This is where I would be developing my questions. It's a very different view, not very different, but quite different view than you see when you are answering. And the way I can see what you see is I go to the preview, which opens up a new tab. So I still have my old tab, so I can get back to my back end. But in my front end, I can see what you see. And that's kind of important to look at because sometimes things don't make sense or are out of order or whatever. But you can see here, I don't see responses. I can't change anything. I have to go to the back end in order to do this. All right, so that's you've dived in. Now we're gonna take it back a step. We'll go to our slides and have them take us through a little bit. Okay, so we are going to do Google Form Basics. So we're just going to look at the where are those forms? How do you start one? Where are the templates? We'll move through that, and you'll have these slides at the end, so you'll be able to come back to those step-by-step things. But we will move through those a little bit quickly. Then we can talk a little bit specifically, not a lot of deep stuff around surveys, but we'll talk a little bit about what to think about when you're creating surveys. We're going to look at the data that you get back, and there are 2 different kinds of, or 2 ways to see that data. One is sort of in on the website, it's on the Google form itself, and then another one is on a Google Sheets, which we're going to really use the Google Sheet version. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how we could take that data and use it in a variety of ways. Okay. Oh, and I didn't put a link to the slides in there. I think I was starting to make a bit.ly one and I forgot that. Okay, so basics. So where are Google Forms? Who wants to tell us how they get to a Google? If I asked you right now to make a Google form, yes, Kitty, tell us, how do you get there?
Well, you go onto your Google Drive, wherever you happen to be familiar, and just open new. And one of the selections is forms. It's purple, and just click on it.
Beautiful. Yeah. So we have the little form icon up here. That's a really good point. Color does a lot for me. So I don't have to, if I know that it's a purple icon, it's the only purple icon pretty much there. And what's nice is they've added it. So it used to be forms were hidden one step lower. You had to click on like more, and then you got to forms. And I think they figured out forms were very, very popular. So now it's the first set that shows up when you say click on new. So that's definitely one way. If you're already in your Drive, or you already can see that little waffle, which are those 9 little dots, you could get to it from that. Judy, yes.
I think, but I haven't tried this in a while. You can also go forms.google.com.
You can indeed. And this is actually, oh, this was another question, which is, when you were doing the survey, did you have to sign into your Google accounts? No. So to fill out a Google form, you do not need a Google account. But if you are going to create a Google form, you would need an account.
Here's a summary from HTML.
My phone, so I have an Android phone, and if I say Google too much, it thinks I'm talking to it. I should turn it off. Okay, so what our point here was that most of the Google applications, most of the tools, there's a direct link to those by typing in the name of that particular tool, .google.com. So in this case, it would be forms.google.com, drive.google.com, docs.google.com, sheets.google.com. So we are going to use forms.google.com if we're not already in our Drive. As Kitty said, like for me, when I open up my browser, the first thing when I come in, or actually it's probably left over from the night before, I have my browser open and I have tabs across the top, and one of those tabs is probably my drive. And so the most effective or most efficient way for me to do this and to organize my stuff would probably be to go through my drive. But if you are freshly opening your browser and you don't need to go to your drive, you're just going to go straight to a form, this is one way you can get there. That is shortcut. And actually often just forms, I think at this point, especially if you're using Chrome as your browser, if you type forms.new, I think that will also get you there. And that also is a rule for all of these tools. So if you say docs.new, I don't think drive.new would work. Sheets.new, slides.new would open up straight into a document. What's going to happen when you do it? Yes, go ahead.
It's Kristen. When I'm in Chrome, which I
Yes.
use as my browser, I can just type Google Forms, and then it brings up like a search list, but it's the first one at the top, so you can click in that way.
Right. There are exactly, and so none of these are wrong. This is all, our goal eventually is efficiency, but if you have your system, use your system, that's a very good one. Just to show you, if I do forms, I'm in Chrome, right? So forms.new, it actually goes straight into a form. Where if I did forms.google.com, it would take me to one layer out. So I would see.
Yeah, I did forms.new in an Apple and a Safari browser, and I got one step out as well.
Okay, so that's interesting, right? So different browsers will give you slightly different things. But the key is, at the very least, you know that if you're in your drive and you go to new, there's Google Forms. And when you're looking over here, you can from here go to a template. You could make a quiz. So in this case, I think they've already turned on the quiz ability. Quizzes allow the answers that when the person takes a quiz in the Google sense of quiz, they're going to get the responses back, or you'll be able to tell automate what is right and what is wrong on that quiz. And then you can just get to a blank form, but you get to blank form if you just click on Google Forms too. But just know that that's what these little arrows do. They give you a little bit more access. Excellent. So we now know how to get to Google Forms, and we actually saw what a Google Form. So these are my recent ones, and then there are templates. And the templates, there aren't a lot of them, and I don't know that they're that useful, but they can certainly make things, they can be a shortcut. So if you are developing an event registration, you may want to pick on that template, and then you could go ahead and edit the content. And it's probably limited what they're saying here, right? So that's a nice shortcut. When you have a form that you like and you want to make another one of it, the same thing, you can go to these three dots and make a copy. This one right here. And that way you can have, a second version of the same thing and edit that differently, change the color or whatever. And now you'll have two different forms. Obviously you can move it to the trash. I don't know what the pre-filled link is.
Oh, I think that's just if you send it to the students.
Okay.
I think that's what that is.
Yes, but that I'm used to getting. So I usually to send it, I go up to the send button, and send is stupid. I say share, right? I want to share a link. Where is the link to this form? I have, and I've heard from many other people who have sent this beautiful URL up here, thinking that would get their folks to the front end of the form, and it will not. And in fact, they won't be able to, even if you wanted to share the back end, this doesn't work. You have to go to that send box, and this is where I usually get my link that I send, and I shorten it, and I copy that and email that. So that's where you get you can also email directly out of here, and you can get the embed code. So say you're making a website or something like that, you could have the form embedded into your site, which would mean that the person would just stay there and fill out the form. Kitty, do you have your arm up and raised? Or is that from
My
before?
entire arm. Yeah, I see here a box at the top that says collect emails. can I use that instead of having one of the questions on my form for the student to type their email? Does this give it to me automatically if I put that?
So that's what I think it's intended to do. What I have found when I click that box is it often makes people have to sign in to their Google accounts. And it, so we can test that at the end of today to see if that's what happens. But I've clicked that thinking the same thing you did, and it's not benefited me. So I've chosen to usually keep a question in my that I make up in my form for emails. But I do know there are reasons to do it. It hasn't worked for me.
The
in
student
sort
would
of-
have to have a Gmail account and they have to be expecting it. It wouldn't.
Yeah, I think that's true. So let's see if I click on collect emails and I go to this link, I'm going to copy it and I'm going to go up here and I'm going to stat and let's see if it lets me. So it certainly has me already in here because I'm already logged in. I don't know what would happen if I wasn't logged in. And I think that in the responses, let's play with that when we're actually making our forms, because I think today if we can all make a short survey and share it with each other, and then we can feel out all those problems, because me doing it to my own information, often I'm not going to get what the real experience will be from someone outside. But that was a good point, that it definitely has that. And even when you're making a question, like this question here, which is email. Oh, it's not going there either. Okay. In this question, it's going to ask me what kind of text I want. And in this case, it would probably raise a flag if they wrote their email incorrectly, like they didn't have a .org or .com at the end or something like that. And that can also be a barrier, even though it's there to help make sure that people are entering things correctly. I tend not to do this because I find that inevitably some of this leads to some people not being able to respond. Judy, your hand. Yes.
Yeah, I see those little blue boxes. What are those
Yes,
boxes?
so the blue boxes. So let's go back to our slides. So you'll notice I have a couple of what we call extensions to my Chrome. One of them, I don't know if you can really see it, but over here, there's a little microphone on the right side of my screen. That is
Yeah, we're not seeing your slide.
oh, because I moved out of something. Let's see.
No, I think just click on it.
I am
We're
seeing
seeing
the
the
slide.
slides.
We're
the
seeing them.
microphone.
I see it.
Yeah, we're seeing them.
So Kristen,
Oh,
you're not.
Well, are you all the way over on the right that you're seeing it, or as
Yeah.
center of the page?
Center of the page is a big purple thing that says Google Docs, Google Drive, Google Forms, Google Sheets. And where she was hovering over at the right, there was a microphone she was showing us on the little dock on the side.
Right, but I would think she'd want to be showing that as her main slide. That's why
Right, so
It's not a
right-
slide. She's just showing her screen.
Yes. So right now I'm sharing my slides, but they're not enlarged. But what I'm showing you is that I always have this little microphone there. And that's because I added to my Chrome this extension, and that can be helpful. So let me go down in the slides because I actually have a couple of slides about this. Somewhere deep below.
Nell, how did you add that?
All right. So when you are in Chrome, there's this, so extensions are these tools that you can add into your Chrome. And what I've done in our slides is I have a couple of them. This is the talking one. So if you want to add this extension, so you're adding a new functionality to your Chrome, you would be in Chrome, you would go to this link, and you can always go to chrome.google.com web store and look at all of their many extensions. These are just like apps on your phone in a lot of ways. But this is one I think that Liz Elena turned me on to. And it hovers there all the time. Whether I'm in slides, whether I'm in docs, whether I'm just searching the internet, there's always this little mic there. And if I want to record my voice, I could do that. And then I can add that to, so for example, you could have a recording of your voice reading the questions in your survey. So that's why we mentioned it to do with forms. So if you're interested in that, slide number, what slide am I on? 32. has the link to that. And then the number one, similarly, is something called Equatio, and that gives you that little blue box. And that, if you were to use Google Forms for a math quiz, for example, and you wanted to use more of the mathematical symbols and so forth, by adding that to your Chrome, it's going to show up inside your forms. So on the back end of my form, I see that as an option all the time, right? I'm not clicking on it. If I click on it, then it should bring up a little dialog at the bottom here where I could pull in, and I have to sign into it, which I haven't done. But basically it pulls in all of these different, I don't even know what to call them, but different ways to talk, or different tools or different symbols that you might find useful, but it's very math sciencey. So that's why you see that there. In the version that the survey taker sees, those will not be visible. So again, I'm looking at my back end to see my front end. I go up to that little eyeball, and that's the preview, and that will show me what the person I'm sending this to will see. And you see, oh, I think because I did click on that math one, it did add it to name. But it's interesting. So it is showing up for them. So I guess they can respond with numbers if they want, or not numbers, but symbols if they want to. I think that's because I added it. I don't think it's because it's there normally. Yes, Kitty.
Was the voice thing that you were talking about, the extension, does it do a similar thing to what I have on my phone when you can dictate an email or a?
So this is actually more recording of your voice. So if I clicked on this right now, I could record my voice and then stop it. And then I could add that. And Liz Elena, have you used that more than I have? I can certainly say things right now, and it's recording them. And now I have a little link that I could put into my form. So it would actually be a voice, it would record my voice.
It's a voice memo kind of thing.
Yeah, rather exactly like yeah, what do they call that when you have it? Yeah, so you're recording your voice. It's not a transcription.
Okay, thank you.
So if I could catch that one.
Nell, will the recipient know that that's what it is?
So let's see if we can add that in here. I haven't actually done that. Liz Elena, have you actually put audio into your forms?
Yeah, so yeah, it's a recording device. So just what Nell did, you activate the microphone, right? And then you give a direction or instruction.
And how do I add it to my form?
So you grab the link.
I grab the link.
So depending on how you do it, it kind of automatically saves.
Okay, so maybe I wasn't in here, and
you have to kind of grab the link and then you add the link like any other link. But I don't know why it didn't save it automatically, because that's what I liked of it.
Right, it creates this, but then I don't know, so I can just paste it in. Okay, and I'm going to just paste it in here.
Anywhere, right, whatever you want. As part of the name, you could say, paste that link, right? And you could say, please write your name.
Got it.
I don't know why it's not saving automatically, but.
Okay, so I could make listen, and then I could highlight that.
Yeah.
And click on link.
To word that way, yeah. There you go. Okay, boom, and that's it.
Okay, so now when someone sees this under name, they can click on that.
Click it, and then it takes you, and
maybe they've added some new horrible piece to this. So it's not as easy as you thought.
Right.
So we'll play with this. We use
too much for my students.
Yeah, not helpful. And there are definitely other ways to do those voice recordings, but the audio piece can be very helpful if you're working with students for whom reading is a struggle, or for whom it's good to hear pronunciation. And technically you could do quizzes where you are asking the question verbally or out loud, and they're writing their answers. But yes, we'll figure that one out for next time, because I haven't played with that very much. And the math one, similarly, my colleague Cynthia turned me on to, and again, I've had no reason in my life to make anything with all these math symbols, but for her it was a lifesaver. So if you are working with math in any way, adding equatio is a very helpful thing. All right, so we've got lots of these open. So notice that, and this is something, again, for feeling comfortable in Google, every time I do any of this stuff, it's just adding a new tab, right? I didn't lose any of my original, I didn't lose. So when I start off in my editing version, and now I probably just closed one out, it just keeps opening new tabs to the right. So when you're playing around with forms, don't do what I just did and close out anything, but you'll see that you have the ability to go back and forth between your back end and your front end, and those tabs stay open, and it will just keep adding new tabs to the right of the original tab. Yes. Any questions? Yes, Kristen.
Yeah, now, what was the name of the feature where you can record your voice and insert it?
This is the one that we were suggesting is talk and comment.
Okay,
Voice
thank
notes.
you.
And let me go ahead right now and give you the link to our slides, just because it might make you feel a little bit like you have it all at your fingertips. Chat. So these are our slides for today. And again, I'll send them to you separately, but I know there's some links in there that you might be wanting to get to straight away. All right, I'm going to back us up. We're going to talk a little bit about the kinds of questions you can ask. So we already talked about where you get your Google Forms. You know where they are. This is the part I showed you kind of in real life. So there are lots of different question types. And when you're making a survey, you want, which is a little different than a quiz, right? The kind of content you're getting. You want to really think about the kind of data that you want to gather. So if you ask students what they want to bring to the party, right? You're going to have a class party and you're asking students what they're going to bring, and you just leave it as a small, short answer, then probably everybody's answer is going to be different, right? You're going to, if you have 20 students, you're going to have 20 different answers. Even if they write pizza, one might do capital P, one might misspell it. So those will all be different answers, and that's fine. But sometimes that's really annoying, especially if you're working with a really big group of people. You want to try and manage that. That ends up what we call dirty data, right? Because really 3 people wanted pizza, but they all spelled it differently, and now it looks like 3 different things instead of 3 people liking pizza. So if you, depending on the amount of people, depending on the kind of data you're going to gather, right? Everyone's address is going to be different, or most people's addresses are going to be different, and most people's first names are going to be different. But if you want to ask what borough they live in, right? There are only 5 boroughs, so let's go ahead and maybe make a drop down or a checklist so that it's not up to them to misspell the borough name. They're just going to pick from one of the 5 that exist already. Or if the options for lunch or for the party are just dessert and just salad, have just those 2 options and not allow for a lot of messiness. But there are other things where you really do want to make sure that you include a space for them to write as much or as little as they want to. You can see we have a short answer and a paragraph. What do you think is the difference? Did you notice on the survey that we sent you today, or that you did today, any difference between when you were typing in your own words, the different size of the box that you get?
Yeah, how many words do you get? What's the difference in the amount of characters? Do you know now?
I don't know that there is a difference. What I know the difference is that the window that you get to see your content in a short answer is a small box. So if you type a lot, you're only going to be able to see about 2 lines of that. Where with a paragraph, you get a much bigger box and you can see more of your writing as you're typing it in. We can Google, someone maybe here can Google to see if there is actually a limit, but I don't believe there is. I don't think there's a limit. I think it just is very uncomfortable to type in, to type in a box where you constantly have to scroll back up to figure out where, what you said earlier. So to me, a short answer would be a name, maybe your birth date, maybe your dog's name. I don't know. Short answers, a single line, hopefully, 1 sentence. And paragraph would be where you want to give people the option to write a paragraph or several lines at least of information.
I
thought it just stopped recording whatever you said after that one line, and it just didn't pick up any more that you wanted. Like you couldn't type anymore. I
Right.
thought that's the way it worked.
So here's the name one, right? So if I type in here, I love ice cream and cake, and when it rains, I use an umbrella, and I like boots, and it is almost fall. Like, I just think it will let me do that for a really long time.
Wow, it really takes it all.
Yeah, where at the end, we gave you a big space, which you don't, and again, you don't see that, you don't know, but if I go down to where we asked you anything else we should know, there, if I was typing the same thing, I'm just gonna be cheaty and go up here and grab this one. This would be so annoying to type in a paragraph in. Okay, so I'm copying that. So again, it's not obvious, but as I type it in here, it's gonna allow it to keep going down. So red cars taste
So no, it looks like the short answer, you just keep seeing it, like you said,
online.
on the
Yeah.
right, on the right. You don't see the whole text.
Yeah, and this I think will give you a lot. Like I can just keep, right? So paragraph really gives a space for the person to write and be able to see everything. And a short answer, maybe there's a limit at some point, but certainly, like, let's see if I copy this whole thing and I paste it, another short answer one, let's do it in here.
Let's see, on Google Docs help, it says,
A lot.
take that back. It said, well, I take that back. I'm looking at where you have the option to limit it or require something.
Yes.
Never mind. Yeah.
Which is another thing, right? And you've seen probably if you've ever written a proposal I've seen it when I write proposals for conferences where they only want 50 words for your bio or something like that. And I think there are ways to put limits in here, but usually I've actually never done that. Lizalina, I know you guys have done a bunch of work around your people's applications, but maybe you've not limited them to a certain length of time now. But so anyway, we've proven to ourselves that you certainly can write a lot in a short answer, but it's crappy. It's a bad experience. So if you know you're going to be asking them something where they're going to write more than a line or so, you really just want to give them the option of having the paragraph. And the nice thing is they don't, they could just write one word and it will still be there. But if they have to write 10 words in a short answer place, they would be sad.
Yeah, we never use for the courses. We always go for the paragraph because it's
Inevitably, that's what people
Yeah.
need, right? So name, email address, name of the program that you're in, those to me would all be short answers. And again, if it's a set number of programs and you're willing to do it, you could type all of them in. It could be a drop-down answer rather than having them write it in. This is one that often happens for me. And in fact, there's another example I was going to show you where I'm pretty sure we did type in all the program names because it was going to be much simpler than going in and fixing afterwards that, people put in the initials of their program or they put in their part of CUNY, they put CUNY at the beginning or at the end or whatever. So to limit all of that and make it clean from the beginning, a drop down would be really nice, but it's a lot of work on your part to make that, but it'll be less work later on. Okay, so what's the difference here? Well, okay, so I did add this question in today because this wasn't there originally. What kind of question is this, do you think? How would you describe it? This is how much experience do you have using Google Drive?
Is it like a scale or linear or something like that?
Yeah, it's a scale. And when we're looking at the question options, that's here. It's a linear scale.
I never knew what that was. I
Yes.
saw it and I was like, I have no clue what this is. I don't want it.
Yes, no, and I would actually ignore these two. I've tried using them and it's pretty as far as how it looks on the form, but the data is very messy, very confusing. So I don't like these for the data that I gather. It's like you get a lot of stuff in weird boxes and it doesn't help you. But linear scale is not bad. The default is five levels, and when I was in grad school they told us you should do 7, so I do 7, but you could do 5, you could do 2. And basically you're given the option of putting in the two extremes. So you can't write any words related to anything in between, but you get to say what the most or least, what the two ends of the spectrum are. And you want to be careful with that language, right? And you can decide, it can be kind of funny, like 1 and 7, people tend to, we had evaluations for the LEC, and I think we once messed it up. And there were a bunch of them where like, this class was useful. Click on the 7, yes, very useful. This class, I learned a lot, and I can't wait to share it with my colleagues. Yes, 7, absolutely. And then I think we did something where we reversed it, and people kept still giving us a 7. That really meant that we were doing something terrible. So just be aware that people kind of get into auto mode, and you want to kind of just use that to your advantage rather than to fight it. So here you get to click 1, and that's it. If I click another one, that first one goes away. What is the difference between these squares and these circles? These are two other kinds of question types.
I think it's with the squares, you can tap or click on more than one.
Exactly.
Whereas with the circles, you can't.
Yes, and you can test it out, right? If I click on another one, it's just going to get rid of the other one. Where here, I can click on as many as I want. And I made a point of writing that in here, check all that apply, because people don't recognize often that this is a circle or a square, but you as the maker of the form now know that. So if you see circle, we call those radio buttons, and those are, let's see what they call them. So multiple choice. So only one option is going to be something they can submit. Check boxes, they can submit as many as they want. Drop down, it's very much like a multiple choice, right? Like you could have 10 options, or you can only pick one of them. And I would not use a drop down if I had 10 options. Multiple choice maybe, and maybe with 10 options, it's a checkbox thing. But again, be careful, right? If you say, what do you want for lunch? And you can only pick one thing, and you give them checkboxes, they could check everything, and your data will be very messy. You can see here that the file upload is grayed out, as I mentioned, because I was using it in my workspace, but you can add a question type that is a file upload. So if you need to, proof of vaccination, or you need, again, with conferences I've gone to where they want you to upload your photo or resume or something like that. And then all that data is kept along with the form in your Google Drive. So be aware of that, because it's all going to be content that's coming into your drive and will take up memory. We did linear scale, multiple choice grid, and checkbox grid. It's really allowing you to make kind of these very multiple, like I like ice cream on Tuesdays, and I like spaghetti on Wednesdays, like that kind of crisscross stuff. Usually not the best, again, elegant in the way that it looks and functions for the person taking the survey, but the data you get is very congealed, and you have to pull it apart. So you'll see, even with these checkbox ones where people do multiple answers, that all those items are now going to be listed in one cell of your spreadsheet. So if you might need to pull those out, it's a little annoying. So sometimes for you, it's better if you actually just don't let them do multiple, but ask several questions instead of asking one. But it can work too, depending on what you want. When you're looking at the form, so if I click out of, so right now, this is kind of a rule in Google in multiple places, like if you use slides or some other editing tool, wherever there's a blue line, that's usually what is live, what you are actually editing right now. So right now I'm editing this. When I'm editing this, I see all of this information. I have the duplicate this question. I can put it in the trash. I can say if it should be required or not. These 3 dots are where I can add the description. And then response validation, that's, again, for our work, that is usually a barrier, but it would mean that you could say, like, if you ask for a date and you said response validation, it would require it to be in a date format, which again is clean data, but is usually it will definitely lead to some people not being able to submit their response and not know why. And I'm sure we've all met those situations. So this is where you see that drop down of all the different kinds of questions. Oh, date and time are two that you can do. And again, the danger, the bonus here is that it will require date and time to be written in that format. And that, again, like I said, I've seen people struggle with that. Let's see. So that's one place you can choose your question type. You can also come over here if you want to create. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, you could also, in the text, you could define how you want those things put in, like, if the
Yes.
date, 00 month and whatever, you could explain that to people.
Exactly.
Again, depends on who your audience is.
Yes,
Yeah.
but I would prefer to do it that way and have them follow what I say rather than have this forced requirement, because once this is a forced requirement and they mess it up, they can't submit it, and it makes people very nervous and worried. So what I would do what you just described. I would go under description and I would say first name, spell it right, first name and last name, for example. And so I've given them the description of what I want. Whereas if and I won't do it to this form because you guys are already using it, but we can look when we're making forms, try it out. So when we're making, at the end here where you all get to make a form, try out adding those things and see what happens. But I've had these experiences where I'm like, yay, and it's like, oh, 2 people are very sad because they can't submit. And it's the weirdest part, particularly I think with the date, was like if you didn't do 2 digits for the day, then you got out of kilter for the month, and then yeah, anyway, I have horrors about it because I remember people struggling, and I don't want them to struggle giving me my information. This is the question I'm editing right now. I know that because I can see all of these things, and also because I see this blue line. If I click on this one, now the blue line is here, and I can edit this one. This, especially as you get into a longer form, it can feel very confusing. So it's very good to know. I know where I am because it's this blue line, and it will just move. Like I can scroll all the way down to the bottom, click on this one. Now it's the one I'm editing. We have these 6 little dots here. What happens with these 6 little dots? Can anyone suggest?
You can move it on the page.
Exactly. So you'll notice once you're doing this, you're like, oh man, I forgot to ask them their favorite color. And I want that to be the second question, and I'm all the way at the bottom. And if I click plus right now, the question's going to go probably towards the bottom. It's kind of random. I don't always know where the question's going to show up. So I can write down your favorite color. And I'm going to leave that as a short answer. And oh, did you notice that? It guesses. From the question that you type in here, it guesses what kind of question it's going to be or what kind of answer you want. So when I type, the default, when you open a new box, let me get rid of this one. When you open a new question, the default is generally multiple choice. So that's where it starts off. It assumes that's what you're going to want. But as I type something in here, so if I say, who is your favorite person? It's going to guess that's the short answer. Actually, no, because I want it to be multiple choice. So I have to go back and change it because I want to say me or me. Limited your answer options there. Oh, it doesn't like that. It must well, it's warning me that I've duplicated.
Because it's a multiple choice and you're giving the same thing.
And I duplicated, yes, exactly. So I'll say her. So it has a lot of artificial intelligence in there that will guess things for you that may or may not be true. So I'm gonna delete that one, but you saw that it guessed the kind of question I want. And so I should be aware of that. One of the things that I often do is I duplicate questions. So I don't have to start over every time. Like I'm gonna ask like name and these first few, right? Name and email address. Email address, I always duplicate. So I would come up here and I would duplicate. And in this one, I would just change name to, you know, email address or phone number. Because it's the same kind of question and it just makes my life a little bit, it speeds things up a little bit, right? Even if I want to change the question type, I might duplicate, because duplicate helps me to remember to keep things required. And you have to decide what should be required. Sometimes questions should not, the answer should not be required because more than half the students might not have an answer. But you can always tell them if they don't have an answer to write NA or to, you know, Google in that case doesn't really care. You could just write the letter S and it would be okay. But a lot of people don't know that. It's like when you know, you're on a phone tree and my husband will just go 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. He'll never go through the phone tree. And I'm always like, press 2 and then press 5, you know. So this is that thing where when there's a required question, people feel like they have to give a very specific answer. And if that doesn't seem to relate to them and it's required, they often get stuck. So just know when you're deciding what's required that don't make them required unless they need to be. And like I said, what required means is that they have to respond, they have to put some sort of response or you won't be able to submit your answers at all. All right, let's see, go back to our slides. So those are our question types. And here we aren't using it really for surveys, but for quizzes particularly, and maybe for surveys too, you might want to, you can actually add an image. So there could be an image instead of a question or an image to go along with a question. And you just click on that little, this is their icon for images, and then they'll let you go out and you can upload one, or you can take a picture or by URL. Or you could just do a Google search right there in the form. So that's probably what I do quite often, unless I have a very specific image I want to use. So that would look like this, right? So I looked up carrots and my Google image search would give me a bunch of carrots, and then I can pick one. And this again was being used more in our quizzes than in a survey. So we talked already about sharing, right? So we use the word send. And you have a couple of options there. You have the envelope, which is their symbol for email. So it would go straight into your email. It would create an email basically with that link in it. And then you would address that to whoever you wanted it to go to. You can get the link. You can shorten that URL, which I tend to do just because it's less alarming to see. And then I often, you'll see, make it into a bit.ly link, but that's a separate issue. But as long as you're sending it to them in some way that they can click on it, the length of the link doesn't really matter. And then the embedding is really if you have a website or something like that. Right, so that's
Nell,
yes.
can it get sent right into WhatsApp?
There is not a direct thing for WhatsApp. So you would want to need, what I would probably do is I'd have WhatsApp open on my browser, because you can connect to a web-based version of WhatsApp and then you could paste the link right in there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little bit old-fashioned in that it only has the email option and not all the other lovely sharing options. I guess you can do Facebook and Twitter, but not WhatsApp at this point. You can also, so say you were working on a form with somebody else and you wanted them to be allowed to edit it, sharing this link will not give them edit access. They will only see the front end. The way you add someone who should be allowed to edit is down here where it says add collaborator. And I think that's also in those 3 dots down the side. So that would invite someone to come in and actually see the back end of it. And that's different than seeing just the front end. And this is that warning I told you about where if you're using Google Workspace, that file upload might not be possible. This is what we see. Yeah, so here's the add collaborator. So when I'm looking at my slide or my forms, I have these little images up here along the top. So we've seen send is for sending, getting the share link. This is to go forward or backward, and I would just use Control-Z usually to go backward. This is our preview, so we can see what the front end looks like. This is how we change the colors. And you have some other options there where you can change the fonts, which is relatively new. They have more fonts than they used to have. You can have a header. So you see here, we have Google Club as our header, but they have a bunch of images and colors that you can pick from. So that's how you affect the background. So if I wanted this to be a darker purple, and again, I mostly do that to help have a theme and to help people differentiate, like they know they've taken this survey before, or helping them to know where they are, basically. So that was under the palette. And then add-ons, that's what we were talking about earlier. I haven't, it's different than the sound, this microphone thing and the math stuff. I guess I have Form Publisher. I don't even know what that is, actually. Yeah, I'm scared and I'm not going to look at it right now. But so you can add on other things that are specific to forms, not just to Chrome, which the other two extensions were for Chrome. Yes, Kristen.
Could you explain again how the keystrokes that you use instead of the back and the forward arrows?
Yes. So one of the most beautiful moments in my life was learning about, and this is for PCs, Control Z, which is undo. So we're very lucky here. We have these undo arrows and redo arrows, but we often don't see those. So if I'm in the middle of typing a Word document, or I'm making a PowerPoint or a Google slide and I move something, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's terrible. Control Z will take you back one step. Control Z again will take you back another step. And the opposite of that, the redo, is Control Y. Control Z and Control Y are your friends whenever you're editing stuff and you're like, oh my gosh, I just made a mistake. It's very nice. Instead of trying to instead of keeping going forward and trying to fix the problem, it lets you go back to the version you had before.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So again, from the back end, this is the view right now is of the questions. I can also look at the responses. And as I mentioned, there are two ways I can look at responses. This is the one that's built into the form. So when I come in here, I can look at it in a summary view. I can look at it by question, and I can look at it by individual. And what's nice here, so with the names, I'm not going to have however many people have responded, it will be that many entries. But as we get down into some of these other ones, now I'm going to see, oh, look at that. We have 3 people from Shorefront, right? So this is a quick view. I don't know who they are. If I did the individual thing, I could find that out. But from here, I'm just getting a basic overview, right? How many people feel experienced? Again, this is anonymous here. I don't know, but I have a sense in the room. Oh, we have some people who are very experienced and some people that or use it a lot and people who don't. Similarly here, right? Like, ooh, look at that, Gmail. So this visualization of data is very useful to get an overview, but not so great if I needed to turn around and talk specifically to Nell Eckersley and say, hey, Nell, I noticed in the survey that you said that you're very worried about using Google Forms, and I'd like to work with you on that. Whereas Liz Elena, she said she was more worried about Google Classroom or something. So this is great for the overview. You can get into the individual stuff or go down by question and actually see what different people said, but I don't do it here. What I would do is I would go up to where there's this little icon here. What is, so we said the purple icon is for forms. What is the green icon for usually in Google?
Spreadsheets.
Spreadsheet, exactly, yes. So this little, as I scroll over it, you'll even see create a spreadsheet. So I'm going to click on that. I don't already have one. So if you use the same survey, maybe you want to keep adding on to the same spreadsheet. But in this case, we have never done that. And often you'll find you just want to do a new one. So I'm going to say create a new spreadsheet. It's going to give it the same name as my form by default, but I could change that. And I'm going to say create. And it's going to make a beautiful spreadsheet with all that information broken out. And I can just hide this stuff so we don't have to worry about it. But let me move you guys there. So I get a time that you did it. I get the answers all spelled out. I have to remember here was 1 a lot and 7 wasn't a lot, but this is pretty easy for me to look at. This is what I mean by when you have people do multiple checkboxes, you end up with all those different answers in one cell. And that is a little bit harder for me to use, right? Like if I had a thing that just told me, you know, broke those out into separate questions, so they were all in their individual columns, that would be actually easier for me to do. So you have to decide, you know, who are you going to do a little bit more work, or are they going to do a little bit more work? When I'm viewing this, I'm seeing some stuff is cut off, right? So we're not doing a lot about Google Sheets today, but the way that I can have that, see everything that's being written inside a cell is to go up to this symbol here. And again, you might not remember that, but you can go up and just scroll over them, it'll tell you, but you want to go to the text wrapping. And I want it to wrap. And now that means it will fit, it will move the edges of that cell so that it contains everything in there. And this can be a little annoying because now everything's a little deep. I can move it out. That's another way to see everything that's in the cell. Again, so, you know, one of the things I want to be able to do is sort my data so I could get all the no's and be able to count them up really easily. Or when I were here and you guys wrote longer pieces, I might want to be able to see that writing. And again, I could do it here in the, so by clicking on the letter, the top of the column, I can make the whole column being edited, formatted, and I can make everything like this. So there's a lot of different, you know, I'm gonna have different amounts of writing from different people. I find this very awkward. Now I can freeze, so I could actually see the person's name. I could freeze a column. Again, if you're familiar with Excel, these are things you can do there. You do this under view. I can go in there and freeze one row, for example, which is the header row. And actually, I think it had already frozen that. Sorry, let's freeze it again. So one row, and let us also freeze. So the one difference here is I have to go in and manually do each direction, where I think in Excel, you can freeze it. You can locate your cursor in the box and have it freeze above and beside that, where here you have to kind of do it this way.
What do you mean by freeze? What does that do?
So what freezing does is let me move this over. No. Oh, it just moved the freezing. Okay, so what this does is it moves. Well, I'll do it here. So as I move the whole page over, it holds those visible. So before this, if by the time I got over here, I would have, if I was looking at Google Drive and column F, I would have no idea whose name was on the left of that, right? So by freezing the column, I keep that always visible. Same with this top piece. Like I like to keep the titles of my columns visible all the time. As I scroll down, you know, again, we didn't have too much data, so I could see everything at one time. But if I had like a lot of people here, by the time I got down to line 73, I would have totally lost line 1 or row 1. So freezing.
Can you show us what you clicked on to freeze again, please?
So yeah, so it's view, right? Because it's going to impact my view. So I'm going to go up to these tabs along the top. And where it says view, the second one is freeze. And you're going to come here to, no, I don't want anything frozen, right? So I would come back to the same place to have nothing frozen. And then I can decide, I really want these 2 rows to be frozen. So or 2 columns rather. So I'm going to go back to view. I'm going to go to freeze, and I'm going to say 2 rows. 2 rows instead of 2 columns. That wasn't actually that helpful. So let me undo that again. We'll change that to 1 row, which is usually my header row. And then I want to be able to see the person's name as I scroll back and left and right. So I'm going to go to view again, go to freeze, and go to 1 column, 2 columns, because it's the second column that's important here.
So is it always the first and second columns? If you click 2 columns, you can't click later and have the 5th and 6th? Or,
Correct. So I can never have this column be frozen.
okay,
What I can do is I
Good to
can
know.
move this column so that it's one of the first 2, right? So if I wanted to email address before the name, for example, again, I can highlight the whole column by clicking on the letter name of that column. And as I scroll over it, you'll see my cursor turns from a arrow to a hand. The hand tells you you can move it. So when you see the hand, you click, the hand grabs, and then you can drag it. And that little outline, dashed outline, shows you what it's going to do. I'm going to go ahead and make a new space for it. So let me insert under insert. Or did I do that under file? Yeah, under insert. So if I want to, I can insert another column, an empty column here. So I'm going to right click on this, insert column to the left. All right, so I've made a new space here. Rather than have this overwrite column B, I wanted to make a space for it. Now I'm going to come back. So I have the little hand. I'm going to click. So I'm left clicking. And now I'm dragging it over, and I want to make sure I'm starting at the top of wherever I want to be. Like if I come down here, oh, it's actually not letting me do it. Anyway, that's fine. So I want it to be in the same location. Oh, you know why? Because, so one of the funny things about forms and sheets is that each of these columns is related to the form. So it won't let me move the stuff around. I have 2 options. I can copy and paste, or I can make a copy of this document and use it separated from the form. Does that make sense? So right now, if I was to go into my form, let me get rid of this.
Or is it related to the fact that you already froze row 1, so it won't let you move it?
I don't think that's it. So what I've experienced in the past, we can get rid of the freezing and see if that is the issue. But what I've experienced in the past is that because, so you guys answered the survey, right? And now I'm like, oh man, I totally forgot to ask them what their favorite ice cream is, right? Dang, I forgot to ask them their favorite ice cream. So I'm going to come back now, and I want that to be the second question. Okay, so what is your favorite ice cream? And it'll be short answer. What's going to happen to my spreadsheet now? Well, do you think that question is going to show up there? And do you think it's going to show up as a second question or as the last one added?
Second.
Let's see. So again, this is all automatically happening in the background. I don't do anything. I come back to my spreadsheet. I'm going to wrap these so we can read everything. So certainly it didn't stick it in here. Let's scroll all the way over, and there it is. So the lesson is, don't create the spreadsheet until you're very, very secure that you have exactly the questions you want to ask, or you'll get questions out of order. So I could have moved everything around and it wouldn't have had any problem. But the minute I make the spreadsheet, from that moment on, any new question is going to come at the end. No matter where you put it in your form, the answer column in the spreadsheet is going to be towards the right. Does that make sense?
Yes, but why would you make a new question after you've already sent out and collected the survey? They're not going to answer
right.
it.
That would be a very bad thing to do, but it's happened to me before. And I'm thinking maybe it was more with quizzes, or maybe I reused something. I don't know. I've certainly had that, but you're absolutely right. So usually with a survey, it's too late. You know, they did the survey, they're not going to look at it again. But maybe you're going to share it with a different group and you caught yourself. So you may never have this issue, but just know that if you do add a question after you've created the survey, after you've created, maybe in the past, I've also been too organized and I've gone in and made the spreadsheet before people even answered, because you can do that. I don't know. I only know I hit this and I was like, what the heck? That's not useful to have that question at the end. And then because it's connected to the form, I still think it's not going to let me move that back over here. So let's try that, right? So we wanted it to be our second question. So I'm going to make a space for it. I'm going to add a column. And then I'm going to go over and I'm going to try and grab that question. I'm just going to pull it over. Ah, it did do it. And it didn't take up the space I made. So now I have to take that out. But I definitely had it overwrite other information. So I would just be careful. I'm much happier to make an extra column and then delete it than to have it overwrite something else. So now the data will go in there if people were answering it. And so the spreadsheet will look like the same order as the questions. Okay, so any questions about this piece? It's already 5:19, so we don't have very much time, and I was going to have you all make your own forms. But for homework, you'll make forms and share them, and we'll share them with each other. It'll be fantastic. Any questions so far? So if I asked you right now to make a 3-question survey, and you were to send it out, and people were to respond by a certain date, do you feel comfortable doing that? Or what questions do you have to do that?
I just have a question to what you just said at the very end, and that is there a way to put a timestamp on when it needs to be returned to you?
So you'll get a timestamp of when it was actually done, and you can turn off you can make it not accept any new answers, but you're going to have to manually tell folks what the deadline is. It won't, you have to write it either in, you can, so in the survey up here, in this description, I could say when the deadline is. Usually when I share the link, I'll say when the deadline is. And then when that date happens, you can come in and you can tell it to stop accepting responses. And now it's frozen in time. So this was under responses, right? We've been most of our time has been spent in the question area. We were just looking at responses to actually look at people's responses, but this is also where you can, at the very top, there's this little, and you can start it again too. Yes, Kristen. Oh,
Could you go over the, there are some options when you're setting it up, like that it will send a notice that someone has submitted their answers. And there's some other options that could we just go over those quickly?
Yes.
I think the one that's really good is just it confirms back to people that they have received, that you have received the link or the form.
Yes. So we have questions. That's where we're doing all of our work to make the questions on the survey. We have responses, and then we have the settings. And under settings, this is where you would make it into a quiz. Under responses, so when we first looked at it, it looked like this. We're just going to click on that little arrow. So here, you can force it to collect those email addresses. Test it out if you want to. Again, to me, that's usually been an impediment, not a joy. Send responders a copy of their response, right? So I could change this, and I probably am not allowed to change it now that you guys have already responded. So you might have to do this when you're starting a new, let's start a new one just to see what it looks like.
Mel, do you think if you would send them a copy, it might, for some of the ESOL students, it might be a little too confusing? They may not say, like, what is this?
I wouldn't do it for everything. So I would definitely decide, this is a good one. Like if you're doing a quiz or if you're doing something where, some of the information they're giving you, like I'm thinking, I don't know how much you guys have struggled or how your students are struggling with, we just talked about remembering our password for Eventbrite. So it's an interesting thing where you could have students fill out a form to give you all their passwords as a backup, but then they could get a response that would have the password written in it. I don't know. That's just an example that came into my head. But so I agree with you. I would definitely choose with a survey. Generally, I would not I personally wouldn't want to get my whole survey back.
And I see too, the second line of that is that it requires gathering the email, which could,
which is why it wouldn't let me do it. So I might have to come up here. Yeah,
So Nell, how would that work if you wanted, if it was a quiz and you gave them the answers? Then you would have to copy the.
no, so the quiz is a different setting. If you do the quiz setting, you automatically, you give them this option. You can either give it to them so they can get the answers immediately after, and they have to click on a link to get to the answers. Or later manually, you can select a time and send them back their answers. So they won't.
Okay, great.
Right, so if there are 3 questions, they're going to have to answer all 3. They're going to click submit, and the screen they're going to see after they submit is going to be one that includes a message saying, click here to see your answers or something like that. And that's where you've gone in and put in the correct answers. So you can edit what information they see. If they got it right, yay, that's the right answer. B, they say the wrong answer, you're like, oh, too bad. The real answer is that summer is spelled with an S. And you can add points. So all those are elements that you can do. And once you put the quiz setting on, you'll see in the question types that that's where you put in the answers. So by making it doesn't really work for this one because this is a new one, so I can do that. So we'll make it in a quiz.
Maybe.
Yep.
Well, I was going to say, maybe we could do the quizzes at a later time,
Yes.
because it's a big
it's a huge other one. And we actually did do it before, and I'd love to do it again, but you can go back. I'll remind you which previous meeting that was. I don't know if we have a recording of it, but we certainly have the slides for it. So yeah. So I'm going to undo the quiz piece. So again, generally, I don't think collecting email addresses is helpful, but it does look like if you want to send them a response, you do have to click that on. And now I can choose when requested or always. Allow response editing, so they can come back into to their existing answers and change them. Again, if you're doing something like people are writing their proposals or an application, that can be helpful for them to be able to like, oh, I forgot my phone number. I'll come back and do that later on. So limiting to 1 response or not, again, these all require that sign in. So the way it knows that you're the same. I actually thought you could do that one without that. Let's see. Yeah, you can. So limiting it to 1 response, with some surveys or some things that's really important that you only get 1 answer from a person. Usually they can break that if they really want to by answering from a different device. So it's not 100% done deal, but that would be the difference there. And I know the one there, I know, Kristen, you were asking, like, I know I have some form that I've set up where it's supposed to let me know when I get a new answer. I kind of feel like that's a deeper setting. It's not here. I'm gonna have to look that one up unless anyone else knows. So
Mel, does that mean that if you add that in somehow, somewhere, then you get some kind of notification of that? Is that how that works?
Yes, exactly. So I have a form that is for people who want to sign up for a mailing list. And that form just floats out there in the universe. And every now and then someone fills out that form and says, I'd like to be added to this mailing list. I thought I'd set it up so that I would get notified when someone added information to that form. And I don't. So I did it wrong, apparently. But I also know that it's possible, that there's a setting somewhere. And that's why it's very useful. It's not so useful. Like if you're doing a survey today, you give it to your students and they're supposed to fill it out by next Friday, I would just come in and look at the spreadsheet and be like, oh, I only have 16 responses out of 22. I'm gonna have to figure out the 4 students who haven't done it. I'm gonna remind them, rather than getting 22 notifications that someone just added stuff to your survey. Again, personal choices. So I will look up that one about notifications when things are added, unless anyone else here knows that off my head. So the 2 places I know you have settings are here and these 3 dots. And right now I'm not seeing anything in either place that makes me feel like we're getting to that piece. Yeah, to me, it's all about them receiving. Presentation, is that one? Progress bar. Presentation's an interesting one and maybe useful for surveys because you can actually have a progression bar, which is really thought to be best practices when you're sending a longer survey, so people know where they are in the process. So that is there. You can edit. This is the response that's default when, regardless of whether you're doing any kind of form, this would be the default, and you could come in here and edit that and say, hey, yay, class XYZ at Bensonhurst, you guys got the answers in there, woohoo! Right, so you could totally change that into something else.
I
but
like
that's-
that. I like them very much for workshops. And what I've been doing is customizing it. So whenever someone, let's say you come to a workshop on Friday and I have tons of resources. So I go like, oh, thank you for completing the form. Here's the link to your Padlet.
Perfect. So you give them the Padlet in their response. Very nice.
I'll give the link to the Padlet. So I said, you can have the resources, you just have to complete my evaluation, which is, mandatory by the funder.
Yes. Yes.
And also I made valuable data
Yes.
for improvement and stuff. And then I add whatever link I want there.
So you could put anything you want in there, right? It's a small box, but you could put stuff in there.
Small though, so it gotta
Yeah.
be.
And people have to notice when you submitted things, like it's very easy for us not to really read what's on the screen, so that people
I
can
would say
notice
it.
what you're doing. Yeah, Judy, you raised your hand. Did you have a question?
I didn't have a question. If I've used this and I've changed the confirmation message and made it more personal for the students, and like I usually like to put like a emoji in there, like a smiley face or a thumbs up or something like that for encouragement.
That's nice.
No, it's very nice, and it feels very personal. If there's something you can put in there that really acknowledges your connection to them, it can be very. It kind of is magical. You can decide if they should see a link to do another response. You can turn that on and off. And then the results summary is what you see. You could share it with them, which would be that sort of anonymous overview of what the responses were. Yeah, I don't think there's any other. I don't want that to be on. Yeah. So this is good to know. If you find that most of your questions, you want it to be default, that they are required, you could turn that on. I like to do that myself. So those are the only settings, but I know somewhere deep there's something about getting notification. All right, we're really just about out of time. So the last piece, I'll say that. I think we should do a sheet session, and when I do that, I'll show you how you can take the data from a sheet and make it into a Word document so you can actually read it kind of in a paragraph format, which is a little easier when you're really trying to capture information that's longer than just a checkbox or something like that. And then just as far as survey questions, there's some best practices here. Things to consider. People sometimes get a little fixated on like, oh, I have to ask people's birthday. You don't have to ask people's birthday for whatever we're doing. Just ask for the information that you actually need. Think about what you're going to do with it. Clear in your own mind, is this anonymous information? Like our evaluations were often anonymous, but we give people the opportunity to give us their email address or their names if they wanted to. And then deadlines, be really clear on a deadline, and then just be prepared to remind people of that deadline, because I've seen people be too soft. It's like, no, most people work to a deadline. Tell us when you want this, and then people will figure out how to do it. And often they'll do it the same day. So you don't be too worried if you don't see it in the days before that. And then the only other thing I have those add-ons that we talked about. And then I did include in here a reminder about applied digital skills lessons, because there are actually only 6 lessons that do deal with forms, but those can be great ways to think about using forms, and even think about using them with your students maybe. What I will say is my experience with forms is that people are nervous about the tech, as we all often are, but really once you get that down, the hard part is usually the content and asking good questions or asking questions that are clear for the person who reads them and they know what kind of answer you want, and using the right question type to go with the information that you want to get. And a lot of that, you can learn some of that, but without experiencing it, but most of that comes with experience, I think. So I am going to ask you to do homework, and we'll send this email out to everybody, but I would love, so we're asking you to make, and I'll send this in the email, but make at least a 3-question survey, test out things that you're interested in. You can do more questions than 3, and then send me the links and we will share them with everybody. So you'll get some feedback from the other folks in the club. Because I think that's the best experience, way to really experience it is to make a form and then get responses. And that's often hard to do when you're testing it before you're going to use it with a live crowd. So we have that. We have our live crowd who can be your guinea pigs.
Is it possible to make a quiz? Because I've never done that. Or do you just want a
absolutely.
survey?
Happy if it's a quiz, either way. And the quiz one, I know, like I'll include that in the email. If you want to go back to the slides on the quiz, it was middle of last year or something, or quite early on in our club. So it's been a while. So we'll definitely get you that too.
Thank you.
So totally took too much time, but any questions, any burning things to say? Thank you for filling out the survey too. That's helpful. And if you want to fill it out again, you're absolutely welcome to do that with more thought. But
Can you put the link for the survey back
Yes.
in the chat?
Yes.
And quick question, sorry. So the difference between the checkbox and the
multiple choice.
Yeah.
So the checkbox allows for as many answers as people want to check. And the multiple choice is only one. So if you click on it and then click somewhere else, that first one's going to go away.
I always use the circles, not the squares. I just thought it was the same.
Yeah, I know. It took me a long, I was like, oh, there's circles and squares. They're different. I knew they had different purposes, but I didn't notice the squares and circles. And now I'm like, oh yeah, totally got it. And actually, if you're going to take any kind of test, I'm guessing GEDs like this, they use that in their answers, where like there are answers where you have to give 2 answers, and those were squares, and there were places where you had to only give 1 answer usually, and that was a circle. So double bonus for knowing that. Let's see, I'm just trying to find the link. Yep, there's our survey, and I'll send that again too in our, we'll have a wrap up email that will tell you all the things we said just now at the end. Anybody else? Any questions? Any thoughts? Any concerns?
No questions I put in the chat, but I found I uploaded, I linked it to Nell's 31 slide, like a how-to step-by-step on the token comment. And so you could do it. I find it very useful, especially when you give feedback to writing or things like that, how I use it. In big documents, when I collaborate with my executive director, the comments are so long that I find it easier to kind of use the extension to leave my comment about whatever is required.
What you did.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. For
I
that.
started like, it's a simple how to with the extension.
Yeah. Excellent. All right, so thank you for all being here. Happy FY23 kickoff for Google Club. We will be sending out an email with lots of information, and we will be posting all of this on the blog, and we look forward to seeing you next month. So take care, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you so
you. That was
much.